Everything had order. Until today, the Galactic Empire had dominated for 7,000 years, a vast entity sprawling across nearly all known space. Its stability wasn't accidental. It was meticulously engineered through calculated force, assimilation policies, and technological supremacy that kept rebellious thoughts at the fringes of civilization. The Empire didn't just rule planets. It commanded narratives, cultures, and the very concept of possibility itself. Admiral Selen Myros stood at the viewport of Sentinel Station Epsilon 9, watching the distant stars with the contemplative look that had become his signature expression over 27 years of service. Unlike many in Imperial Command, Myros possessed a strategic mind that questioned assumptions, though never openly. His loyalty to the Empire was absolute, but privately, he wondered about the immutability of power. History, even the carefully curated Imperial histories, revealed that nothing lasted forever. "Admiral, your presence is requested in the Vigilance Chamber," came the crisp voice of his executive officer, Lieutenant Tarim. "Has something happened?" Myros asked, not turning from the viewport. "Standard protocol notification, sir. The Emperor's weekly address to command begins in 20 minutes. Myros nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement without enthusiasm. Another hour of platitudes about imperial glory, unchanging and eternal. He smoothed his immaculate uniform with practiced precision and turned to follow the lieutenant through the gleaming corridors of the early warning station. The Vigilance Chamber was a monument to imperial efficiency. Screens displaying real-time monitoring of countless sectors, sensor data flowing in elegant patterns, and uniformed personnel executing their duties with mechanical precision. Perfection by imperial standards. Myros took his designated seat among the other regional admirals, each face a mask of dutiful attention. Grand Commander Virus, his silver-trimmed uniform marking him as the station's senior officer, stepped to the central podium. The Emperor's address begins in precisely 16 minutes. All systems are operating at optimal capacity. All sector reports indicate. An alarm cut through the room. Not the blaring, urgent sound of combat, but the soft, insistent tone that indicated an anomaly. Protocol dictated such notifications should never interrupt official proceedings. Someone had overridden standard procedure. The chamber fell silent, every eye turning to the central holo-display where a young sensor officer stood frozen, her hand still on the override panel. "Explain this interruption," Grand Commander Virus demanded, his voice like ice. The officer swallowed visibly. "Sir, we've detected something unusual at the outer perimeter of Sector 87 Delta." "Unusual is not a technical term, officer," Virus snapped. "Sir, sensors have detected a vessel moving at approximately twice our established FTL speed limitations. It doesn't match any known configuration in our databases." A murmur rippled through the chamber, the first unplanned sound Myros had heard in such a meeting in perhaps 5 years. "That's impossible," someone whispered. Virus silenced the room with a sharp gesture. "Display sensor readings. Begin full spectrum analysis." The holo display shifted, showing a sleek silhouette moving against the backdrop of space. Data streamed alongside it. Velocity readings that defied imperial physics, energy signatures that matched no known propulsion system, and a structural configuration that seemed to shift subtly even as they watched. "Situation assessment," Virus demanded of the room. The strategic intelligence officer rose. "Unknown craft, unknown technology, unknown capabilities, unknown origin, unknown intent. Threat assessment, potentially severe." Myros studied the readings with growing fascination. Something new. Something actually new in a galaxy where the Empire had cataloged, categorized, and controlled nearly everything. He leaned forward, unable to mask his interest. "Admiral Myros, your analysis?" Virus asked, noticing his attention. Myros chose his words carefully. "If the readings are accurate, we are observing technology beyond our current capabilities. The vessel is either from beyond our known space, or—" He hesitated. "Or it represents a significant technological leap we were unaware of." From whom? Virus demanded. Every advanced civilization in known space is either part of the Empire or pays tribute to it. Myros had no answer for that. None of them did. Sir, the censor officer interrupted again. The vessel has altered course. It appears to be heading directly toward Epsilon 9. Virus's face hardened. Convene the War Council. All defensive systems to readiness state 1. Alert the Emperor's Guard. We may be facing an invasion from an unknown power. As the chamber erupted into controlled chaos, Myros remained seated, his eyes fixed on the image of the approaching ship. For the first time in decades, the perfect machine of Imperial protocol was encountering something it couldn't immediately categorize. Something beyond its experience. And it was coming straight for them. What is that thing, and why is it moving so fast? The War Council chamber aboard Epsilon 9 hummed with tension. 12 admirals sat around the obsidian table, each responsible for billions of lives across their assigned sectors. Grand Commander Virus stood at the head, his face illuminated by the holographic display of the approaching vessel. Tactical assessment, Virus demanded. Admiral Koros, head of Imperial Defense, gestured at the display. The vessel continues to approach its speeds. Our tracking systems struggle to calculate accurately. Size estimates suggest a medium-class cruiser, though the configuration is... He frowned. Fluid. Admiral Drakis asked, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. The structural arrangement appears to shift subtly. Our systems cannot establish a baseline for identification. Admiral Myros studied the readings. The vessel shows no weapons signature that our systems recognize. That doesn't mean it isn't armed, Koros countered sharply. Indeed, Myros agreed calmly. It simply means we don't know. The chamber doors slid open, and Minister of Diplomatic Affairs Dren Halvar swept in, his ornate robes of office swirling around him. Where the military officers were steel and precision, Halvar was all elaborate ceremony and calculated grandeur. The Imperial Diplomatic Corps demands immediate notification when first contact protocols may be required, he announced without preamble. Why was I informed only after the War Council was convened? Virus regarded him coldly. We have not established that this is a first contact scenario, Minister. The possibility of hostile intent takes priority. Everything unknown is not automatically hostile, Commander, Halvar said, taking an uninvited seat at the table. The Empire has assimilation procedures for a reason. New civilizations must be properly incorporated. This is not a primitive culture with newly developed space travel, Admiral Drakis interjected. This vessel possesses technology beyond our capabilities. Halvar waved a dismissive hand. All the more reason to establish diplomatic contact. Superior technology means superior resources for the Empire to utilize. Myros noted the assumption that any new civilization would naturally be assimilated into the Empire, the only possible outcome in Halvar's worldview. For 7 millennia, this had been true. Every encounter with a new species or civilization had ended with the same result: absorption into the imperial structure, willingly or otherwise. Sensor update, a communications officer announced. The vessel has reduced speed, now holding position at the edge of our defensive perimeter. Defensive posture? Virus demanded. None detected, sir. No shield activation, no weapons systems that we can identify. Halvar smiled thinly. They recognize our superiority and approach with caution. As they should. Myros wasn't so certain. Were they being polite? He suggested quietly. Before anyone could respond, the communications officer spoke again, his voice rising in pitch. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the vessel. It's in standard Imperial communication format. Virus frowned. How is that possible? Display the transmission. The central hologram shifted, and a face appeared, a human face. Male, approximately 40 standard years, with an easy smile that seemed wildly out of place in the war room. Greetings from the Pathfinder, the man said cheerfully. Sorry for dropping by unannounced. We didn't know exactly where to knock. The War Council stared in stunned silence. The man continued, seemingly unperturbed by the lack of response. I'm Captain James Chun of the Earth exploration vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace, with gifts and an offer of conversation. Halvar recovered first, stepping forward with practiced grace. This is Minister Drin Halvar of the Galactic Empire. You have entered Imperial space without authorization and using technology not registered with Imperial databases. Explain yourselves immediately. The human, Chun, raised his eyebrows. Well, that's why we're here. To get acquainted. We've been observing the Empire from a distance for some time, and we thought it was about time we introduced ourselves properly. Observing, Virus's voice was dangerous. Imperial space is continuously monitored. No observation could occur without our knowledge. Chin smiled again, somehow both respectful and faintly amused. Your monitoring systems are impressive, but they're designed to detect what you already know exists. We've developed methods that operate outside those parameters. You've been spying, Admiral Koro's accused. Learning, Chun corrected gently. Before initiating contact with any civilization, we study their culture, governance, and values. Standard procedure. Halvar stepped forward again. Your vessel will submit to immediate inspection. You will provide all technical specifications of your propulsion and cloaking systems to Imperial authorities. Following verification of your identity and intentions, appropriate assimilation protocols will be initiated. There was a momentary pause, and Chen's smile faded slightly. I think there might be a misunderstanding, Minister. We haven't come to be assimilated. We've come to establish diplomatic relations as equals. The word equals sent a visible shock through the Council. In 7,000 years of Imperial history, no one approached the Empire as an equal. Perhaps, Myros interjected carefully, we should invite our visitors to discuss their intentions in person. Proper diplomatic protocol would suggest. Imperial protocol is clear, Halvar interrupted sharply. Unregistered entities with unregistered technology must submit to full inspection and registration before any diplomatic recognition can be extended. Chen nodded thoughtfully. I understand your procedures, Minister. However, they were designed for civilizations seeking to join your empire. We're here to establish relations between independent powers. There are no independent powers within reach of this station, Virus stated flatly. There are now, Chen replied, his voice pleasant but firm. Myros studied the human's face, noting the complete absence of fear or uncertainty. This was not the demeanor of someone awed by Imperial might. We would be happy to come aboard your station to continue this conversation, Chen continued. In the spirit of goodwill, I'm transmitting images of the gifts we've brought, cultural artifacts, scientific data, and some culinary specialties from Earth. Our chef is particularly proud of his coffee blend. The hologram split, displaying images of various items, books, data crystals, containers of something called coffee beans, and several sealed packages. Sir, the security officer interrupted urgently. The alien vessel is changing configuration. All eyes turned to the tactical display. The Pathfinder was indeed changing, its sleek form expanding, sections rearranging themselves in a fluid ballet of technology far beyond Imperial capabilities. When it stabilized, the ship had transformed to display what appeared to be a decorative panel along its hull. What is that? Drakis demanded. Oh, that's what we call a welcome mat, Chen explained cheerfully. It's an Earth tradition. You put one outside your door as a symbol of hospitality. Since we're visiting, we thought we'd bring our own. Myros couldn't suppress a small smile. The gesture was simultaneously polite and a stunning demonstration of technological superiority. The ship had physically reconfigured itself, not as a threat display, but as a cultural greeting. This is highly irregular, Halvar sputtered. We specialize in irregular, Chen replied good-naturedly. It makes life more interesting. Now, about that meeting, we're happy to follow any reasonable security protocols, but I should mention that we don't recognize authority based solely on military strength or age of government. We're rather attached to concepts like self-determination and free exchange of ideas. The War Council sat in stunned silence. No one had ever spoken to them this way, with polite firmness that neither acknowledged imperial superiority nor displayed any sign of intimidation. Admiral Myros, Virus said suddenly, "You will lead a security detail to the docking bay and meet these visitors. Minister Halvar will accompany you to handle diplomatic protocols. The rest of the council will monitor from the command center." Myros nodded, rising from his seat. This was unprecedented, something genuinely new in a civilization that had long since come to believe it had seen everything the universe had to offer. As he left the chamber, he heard Chin's voice once more through the communication system. "Wonderful. We look forward to meeting you face to face. Oh, and Admiral Myros, I'd recommend trying the coffee first. It pairs nicely with paradigm shifts. Sorry, we didn't know where to knock." The Epsilon 9 docking bay gleamed under harsh white light, its polished surfaces reflecting the assembled Imperial reception party. 20 elite guards in formation, Minister Halvar in his formal diplomatic regalia, and Admiral Myros, watching the sealed airlock with undisguised curiosity. "Remember," Halvar murmured, "they must be made to understand Imperial protocol immediately. No consistence, no exceptions. 7,000 years of civilization cannot bend to accommodate one unregistered vessel." Myros nodded absently, his attention fixed on the airlock sensors. Their docking procedure was flawless, he noted. Perfect alignment on the first attempt with an unfamiliar system. "Luck, Halvar." "Dismissed." "Perhaps," Myros replied, unconvinced. The airlock cycled, pressure equalizing with a soft hiss. The massive doors slid open to reveal Captain James Chun and 3 other humans, 2 women and 1 man, all dressed in simple but elegant uniforms of deep blue with silver accents. Chun stepped forward, smiling warmly. He was of average height, with features that somehow managed to convey both authority and approachability. "Admiral Myros, Minister Halvar, thank you for your welcome. May I introduce Dr. Amara Okafor, our chief scientist, Lieutenant Sophia Reyes, security specialist, and Dr. Marcus Kim, our xenocultural expert." Halvar stepped forward, his robes arranged for maximum ceremonial effect. "Before any introductions can be recognized officially, you must submit to Imperial security protocols. Your vessel will be inspected, your identities verified, and your technology documented as required by Imperial Directive 5291C. Chin's smile didn't falter. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Minister. The Pathfinder contains proprietary technologies that we're not at liberty to share at this stage of our relationship. As for personal verification," he gestured to Dr. Kim, who stepped forward with a small device. "We've prepared comprehensive biological and cultural data about humans," Kim explained in a gentle voice. "This includes our physiological parameters, basic cultural history, and diplomatic credentials. However, our vessel remains sovereign territory of the Earth Alliance." Halvar's face flushed. "Unacceptable. Imperial law recognizes no sovereign claim within Imperial space except that of the Emperor himself." "Then we have our first topic for diplomatic discussion," Chin replied pleasantly. "The recognition of mutual sovereignty." Lieutenant Reyes stepped forward, carrying several containers. "We brought these gifts as a gesture of goodwill. They've been scanned according to the security protocols you transmitted and contain no harmful materials." One of the Imperial guards moved to take the containers, but Halvar raised a hand to stop him. "Gifts cannot be accepted until formal diplomatic recognition has been established." Reyes raised an eyebrow, but kept her diplomatic composure. "I understand. Perhaps they can be held in a neutral location until such time as they're deemed acceptable." Myros, watching the exchange with increasing interest, finally spoke. "Perhaps we could move this discussion to a more comfortable setting. The diplomatic reception chamber has been prepared." "An excellent suggestion, Admiral," Chun agreed readily. As they walked through the station corridors, Myros noted how the humans observed everything with keen but casual interest. They showed neither the awe expected of visitors to an Imperial installation nor any sign of feeling intimidated by the armed guards flanking them. "Your station is impressive," Dr. Okafor commented, her dark eyes taking in the engineering details of the corridor. "Though I notice you're still using quantum field stabilizers for your artificial gravity." We found graviton manipulation offers better efficiency. Halvar's posture stiffened at the casual mention of technology beyond imperial capability, but he said nothing. The diplomatic reception chamber was designed to overwhelm visitors with imperial grandeur. Soaring ceilings, ancient artifacts from 1,000 conquered worlds, and a massive holographic display of the Empire's territory dominating one wall. The humans took it all in with polite interest, but nothing more. Once seated at the large obsidian table, the humans on one side, the Imperial representatives on the other, Halvar began the formal protocol. You claim to represent an entity called Earth. The Empire has no record of this world or any civilization originating from it. Explain your origins and how you came to possess technology beyond Imperial standards. Chen nodded to Dr. Kim, who activated a small holographic projector. A three-dimensional star map appeared above the table, zooming out to reveal a spiral arm of the galaxy far from Imperial territory. Earth is located here in what we call the Orion Arm. Our civilization developed in isolation from the Empire, which is why we don't appear in your records. As for our technology, he hesitated, exchanging glances with his colleagues. Humanity has taken a somewhat different approach to advancement than the Empire. Different how? Myros asked, genuinely curious. Dr. Okafor leaned forward. The Empire's technological development has been remarkably linear, building upon existing paradigms, improving efficiency, but rarely challenging fundamental assumptions. Our approach has been more revolutionary. We pursue parallel development paths, encourage theoretical challenges to establish principles, and prioritize innovation over standardization. Chaos, Halvar declared dismissively. The Imperial approach ensures stability and reliability. It does, Chen agreed mildly, but it also limits possibilities. For instance, our FDL drive doesn't manipulate space-time the way yours does. We developed a completely different approach based on dimensional phasing. Myros couldn't hide his fascination. That would explain why our sensors struggled to track you accurately. Halvar cleared his throat loudly. These technical discussions are premature. We must first establish the status of your civilization within the Imperial framework. All advanced civilizations within reach of the Empire exist in one of three categories: full Imperial integration, tributary status, or scheduled assimilation. Which category do you propose for Earth? The humans exchanged glances again, and this time Lieutenant Reyes actually smiled, a small, controlled expression that nonetheless conveyed genuine amusement. Chen leaned back in his chair. Minister Halvar, I think it's time we clarified something important. Earth has no intention of joining the Empire in any capacity. We're here to establish diplomatic relations between independent powers. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Imperial guards shifted uncomfortably. That is not an option, Halvar finally stated, his voice cold with certainty. The Empire does not recognize permanent independence for any civilization with interstellar capability within its sphere of influence. And yet, here we are, Chen replied calmly. Independent, interstellar, and well within what you consider your sphere of influence. For now, Halvar said, the threat implicit. Chen's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened slightly. Minister, we've studied Imperial history extensively. We understand that for 7 millennia, you've encountered no civilization that could match your technological or military capabilities. That reality has shaped your diplomatic approach. But I must be clear, humanity is not seeking your permission to exist independently. We are simply informing you of the fact of our independence. Myros felt a chill run down his spine. The words were diplomatic, but the meaning was unmistakable. These humans were not afraid. You speak boldly for a civilization with a single ship. Admiral Harak, the security chief who had joined them, interjected. Lieutenant Reyes spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. The Pathfinder is a diplomatic vessel, Admiral. It would be a mistake to evaluate Earth's capabilities based solely on what you see here. Is that a threat? Halvar demanded. Not at all, Chen assured him quickly. It's context for a productive dialogue. We believe our civilizations can benefit from peaceful exchange, cultural, scientific, philosophical. We're not here to challenge imperial sovereignty over your existing territories, merely to establish our own sovereign status. Halvar's expression had become a rigid mask. This discussion is over. You will be escorted back to your vessel while the Imperial Council considers your unusual situation. No communication will be permitted with your homeworld until a determination has been made. Chen sighed softly. I'm afraid our communication systems don't require your permission to function, Minister. We maintain constant contact with Earth through quantum entanglement. Distance is irrelevant. Another technology beyond Imperial capability. Myros watched Halvar's face carefully, noting the growing realization that the usual protocols of intimidation and control were proving ineffective. Perhaps, Myros suggested, intervening before Halvar could respond, we should allow our guests to present their full diplomatic proposal. Understanding their perspective fully would better inform the Council's decision. Chun gave Myros an appreciative nod. Thank you, Admiral. That's exactly what we hoped for, a chance for genuine dialogue. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sealed container. And perhaps now would be a good time to share at least one of our gifts. This is coffee, a traditional beverage shared during important conversations on Earth. The humans opened the container, releasing a rich, aromatic scent completely foreign to Imperial experience. They produced small cups from another package and carefully measured dark, steaming liquid into each. A cultural exchange, Chen explained, offering cups to the Imperial representatives. On Earth, sharing coffee symbolizes openness to new ideas and perspectives. Halvar looked at the offered cup with suspicion, but Myros accepted his without hesitation. The gesture, offering their own food and drink rather than accepting Imperial hospitality, subtly inverted the traditional power dynamic of such meetings. As Myros took his first sip of the bitter, complex beverage, he had the distinct feeling that something fundamental was shifting in the carefully ordered galaxy he had served his entire life. Chen raised his own cup in a slight gesture of toast. To new possibilities, he said, and in that moment, as the unfamiliar warmth of coffee spread through him, Admiral Selamiros began to wonder if the Empire's 7,000-year reign of absolute dominance might be approaching its end, not with the expected bang of rebellion or war, but with the simple, devastating power of an alternative way of existing. We have a club of 27 civilizations. The Imperial Central Command had been in continuous session for 6 hours, an unprecedented disruption to the meticulously scheduled functioning of Epsilon 9. Admirals argued strategy. Intelligence officers parsed every word and gesture of the human visitors, and Minister Halvar conducted a marathon communication session with the Imperial Palace on the capital world. Admiral Myros stood apart from the chaos, reviewing sensor data from the Pathfinder. The ship defied conventional analysis. Its hull composition shifted between scans, energy signatures pulsed in patterns that followed no discernible logic, and occasional bursts of unknown radiation emanated from what appeared to be its central core. Fascinating, isn't it? Myros turned to find Captain Chun standing beside him, somehow having approached without triggering any of the security protocols. The human smiled at Myros's startled expression. Your security chief approved my request to stretch my legs, Chen explained. Lieutenant Reyes accompanied me for the first hour, but she's having an interesting conversation with one of your engineering officers about theoretical physics. Myros regained his composure quickly. Your ship defies our analysis. Chen agreed easily. It incorporates technologies from several different scientific traditions, not just human ones. Myros raised an eyebrow. Several traditions? Chen's expression became more measured, as if making a decision. Admiral, would you walk with me? There's something I should probably explain, and I think you're the one most likely to understand its implications. Curiosity overrode protocol, and Myros gestured toward a side corridor that led to one of the observation decks. They walked in silence until reaching the large viewport that offered a spectacular view of the surrounding starfield and the Pathfinder, hovering serenely against the blackness of space. Beautiful, isn't she? Chun said, gazing at his vessel. But she's actually quite old by our standards. Old, Myros couldn't hide his surprise. Your technology appears far advanced beyond ours. The Pathfinder is a diplomatic vessel, deliberately designed to operate using technologies that are, shall we say, approachable to those we contact. Chun turned to face Myros directly. Admiral, the reason your empire hasn't encountered Earth before isn't just because of our location in the galaxy. It's because we chose when to reveal ourselves. I don't understand. Chun drew a deep breath. Humanity isn't alone, Admiral. Earth is part of an association called the Freedom Alliance, a cooperative community of 27 distinct civilizations that share knowledge, culture, and a philosophical commitment to independence and self-determination. Myros felt the deck seem to shift beneath him as the implications sank in. Not one civilization beyond imperial control, but 27 working together. 27, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Chun nodded, each with their own unique cultural and technological contributions. Some are older than humanity, some younger. Some developed incredible advances in fields your empire has barely explored. Others specialized in arts or philosophies that reshape how sentient beings perceive reality itself. And they all cooperate without central authority. That's the core of the Alliance philosophy. Voluntary cooperation brings greater innovation and stability than enforced uniformity. We share knowledge freely, trade equitably, and each civilization maintains its sovereignty and cultural identity. Myros turned back to the viewport, staring at the Pathfinder with new understanding. Your ship incorporates technologies from these other civilizations. Yes, the dimensional phasing drive was developed by the Lyartana, a species from what you'd call the Perseus arm. The adaptive hull technology came from the Vashti, who evolved in a gas giant environment and think about physical structures very differently than most humanoid species. And these civilizations, they've all remained undetected by the Empire. Chen's expression softened. Admiral, the galaxy is vast, and the Empire, for all its power, has a very specific way of looking at things. You search for what you expect to find, civilizations following development patterns similar to your own. The Alliance members have taken different paths, developed different technologies, and in many cases deliberately avoided drawing Imperial attention until we were ready. Ready for what? Myros asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Ready to offer an alternative. Chun turned to face the viewport again. The Empire has brought stability to its territories, and that's not without value. But it's also stifled innovation, diversity, and freedom. The Alliance believes there's another way, one that preserves the benefits of cooperation without requiring cultural or political uniformity. For a moment, neither spoke. Myros felt as though the solid foundation of his worldview was crumbling beneath him. Every certainty, the Empire's technological supremacy, its inevitable expansion, the impossibility of viable alternatives, was being challenged not by angry words or weapons, but by the simple fact of this human and the civilization he represented. Why are you telling me this? Myros finally asked. Why not Minister Halvar or the full council? Chin smiled slightly. Because you asked how my ship works, not how quickly it could be dismantled for Imperial use. Because you accepted coffee from an unknown species without requiring 3 separate security scans. Because in 6 hours of Imperial deliberation, you're the only one who has considered the possibility that humanity might genuinely be offering friendship rather than presenting a problem to be solved. Before Myros could respond, his communication device signaled. Admiral Myros, your presence is required in Central Command immediately, came the voice of Commander Virus. The Council has reached a decision regarding the human situation. Acknowledged, Myros replied automatically. He turned to Chun. I must go, of course. Chun nodded. But Admiral, before you join them, consider this. The Freedom Alliance includes civilizations that have existed for millions of years, developing along paths the Empire cannot imagine. We're not here to threaten you, but neither will we be assimilated. The galaxy is changing. The question is whether the Empire can change with it. Myros hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming in his mind since the humans first appeared. Captain, why now? If your alliance has existed beyond our knowledge, why reveal yourselves at this moment? Chen's expression grew serious. Because we've observed concerning patterns in Imperial expansion. Your resource consumption is becoming unsustainable. Your technological development has plateaued. Most concerning, your cultural homogenization has accelerated. We believe the Empire is approaching a crisis point, one that could lead to either collapse or dangerous desperation. We prefer to help guide a more positive transition. Guide? The Empire does not accept guidance from equals. Chen finished gently. That's precisely the thinking that has brought the Empire to this point, Admiral. The belief that there can be no equals, no valid alternatives, no wisdom beyond your own traditions. The communication device signaled again, more urgently. Myros acknowledged it with an impatient gesture. I must go, he said again. Chen nodded. Of course. But remember, Admiral, what awaits you in that council chamber is a decision based on 7,000 years of the same approach to the universe. What I'm offering is something new. As Myros turned to leave, Chen added softly, and by the way, the Pathfinder isn't our newest ship. It's one of our oldest. Think about what that means. The words followed Myros like a phantom as he made his way to Central Command, where the future of Imperial-human relations, and perhaps the Empire itself, was about to be decided. Hope is contagious. Central Command pulsed with barely contained tension when Admiral Myros entered. Grand Commander Virus stood at the central strategic display, surrounded by the highest-ranking officers of the station. Minister Halvar conferred urgently with several diplomatic aides at a side console, his face set in lines of grim determination. Admiral Myros, your tardiness is noted, Virus said sharply. The Imperial Council has transmitted its decision regarding the human vessel. My apologies, Commander. I was gathering additional intelligence from the human captain. Halvar turned, his eyes narrowing. You were speaking with them? Without authorization? I deemed it prudent to learn as much as possible before we proceed, Myros replied evenly. Virus cut off any further discussion with a sharp gesture. The decision has been made. We have received direct instruction from the Emperor himself. He activated the central display, revealing a formal imperial decree bearing the Emperor's seal. The human vessel is to be contained immediately. Its technology is to be secured for imperial research. The humans themselves are to be detained for comprehensive interrogation regarding the location and capabilities of their homeworld. Myros felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Commander, I must advise against this course of action. The humans possess technological capabilities beyond our. Your concerns are noted. Admiral, Virus interrupted coldly. But the decree is absolute. This Earth represents a potential threat to imperial security and must be neutralized. Preparations are already underway. What preparations? Myros asked, though he already suspected the answer. Imperial Dreadnought Division 7 has altered course to rendezvous with Epsilon 9. They will arrive within 12 standard hours. In the meantime, we will disable the Pathfinder's propulsion systems using a targeted electromagnetic pulse. Security teams are preparing to board the vessel as we speak. Commander, the humans have been transparent in their approach. They've made no hostile moves. Aggressive action against them violates all diplomatic. This is not a diplomatic matter, Halvar interjected sharply. This is about imperial security. These humans claim to represent a coalition of unregistered civilizations operating beyond imperial knowledge. Such a claim is either a deception or a direct challenge to imperial authority. Either way, it cannot be tolerated. Myros looked around the chamber, seeing nothing but resolute faces, minds already made up. 7,000 years of unchallenged supremacy had created a culture incapable of conceiving alternatives to dominance. When will the operation commence? He asked, his voice carefully neutral. The EMP will be deployed in 30 minutes, Virus replied. Boarding teams will secure the vessel immediately thereafter. Your tactical expertise will be required to coordinate the operation. Understood, Commander. I request permission to inform the humans of their status. Perhaps they will choose to cooperate, minimizing the risk to all involved. Virus considered this briefly, then nodded. Granted, but make it clear that cooperation is their only viable option. Myros saluted and left the chamber, his mind racing. The Empire was about to make a catastrophic mistake, one born of fear masked as strength, of arrogance disguised as certainty. But what could one admiral do against the full might of imperial decree? As he approached the diplomatic quarters where the humans were being held, Myros was surprised to find the security detail standing at attention, but with a peculiar, almost dreamy expression on their faces. Report, he demanded of the senior guard. All is well, Admiral, the guard replied, his voice oddly relaxed. The humans are inside, sharing their music. It's quite remarkable. Myros frowned. Music? Yes, sir. They called it jazz. Very complex mathematical structures, but emotional too. They explained how it works. Improvisation within structure. Freedom within form. It's given me much to think about. Alarm bells rang in Myros' mind. He'd never heard an Imperial Guard speak this way. Contemplative, almost philosophical. He entered the quarters without further discussion and found the four humans seated comfortably, a small device between them projecting what appeared to be both sound and subtle, shifting patterns of light. The music was indeed unlike anything in Imperial records. Complex, unpredictable, yet cohesive. Captain Shin looked up with a smile. Admiral Myros, join us. Dr. Kim was just explaining the cultural history of bebop and its relationship to political resistance movements on Earth. Captain Shun, I must inform you that the Imperial Council has made its decision. Your vessel is to be secured for Imperial study. You and your crew will be detained for questioning regarding Earth and this alliance you claim to represent. Chen's smile didn't falter. That's disappointing, but not unexpected. How long do we have before the attempted boarding? Myros blinked. Attempted? Well, yes. You're planning to disable our systems with an electromagnetic pulse, then send boarding teams. Standard Imperial procedure for securing unknown technology. Unfortunately, it won't work. The Empire has secured countless vessels throughout its history, Myros pointed out, unsettled by Chen's confidence. I'm sure it has. But those vessels weren't designed by a cooperative of 27 distinct technological traditions. Chen gestured to Dr. Okafor. Perhaps you should explain? Okafor nodded, her expression professional but kind, like a teacher addressing a promising student. The Pathfinder systems aren't vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption. Our power core operates on principles that your scientists haven't yet discovered, and our hull incorporates quantum-linked materials that cannot be affected by external energy fields. Even if you could board, Lieutenant Reyes added calmly, the ship's internal security systems would simply put your boarding party to sleep. Harmlessly, of course. You're very calm for prisoners about to face Imperial interrogation, Myros observed. Chen laughed softly. Admiral, we're not going to be interrogated, and you're not going to secure our technology. But more importantly, you don't need to. We came to share, not to be taken. Share what exactly? Ideas, Dr. Kim said simply. The most powerful force in any civilization. Not weapons technology or faster engines, but new ways of thinking. In fact, Chen added, the sharing has already begun. Myros thought of the guards outside, their expressions unusually contemplative. What have you done? Nothing harmful, Chen assured him. When we arrived, we released a cloud of nanobots designed to interface with your station's communication systems. They don't damage anything or access secure data. They simply share information. Cultural archives, scientific papers, philosophical texts, art, music, the full spectrum of Alliance knowledge, freely given. You infiltrated our systems? Myros asked, alarmed. We opened a door. Okafor corrected gently. Your people choose whether to walk through it. The nanobots are programmed to provide information only when directly queried or when someone expresses interest in a specific subject. No forced downloads, no propaganda. Just access to ideas that exist beyond Imperial boundaries. Myros struggled to process the implications. You're saying that while the Council has been debating how to contain you, we've been having fascinating conversations with curious minds throughout the station, Chen confirmed. Your junior officers are particularly interested in alternative social structures. Your engineers have been downloading theoretical papers on dimensional physics. And someone in the medical bay has been exploring alliance approaches to neural regeneration. This is invasion, Myros said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, Admiral. Invasion requires force. We've used none. We're simply making information available. What your people do with it is entirely their choice. Myros remembered the guard's words, freedom within form. The concept resonated uncomfortably with doubts he'd harbored for years. The Imperial Dreadnought Division is on its way, he said, making one last attempt to assert the reality he'd known his entire life. They will arrive within 12 hours. They have the firepower to reduce your vessel to atoms. Chen's expression became serious. Admiral, I want to be very clear. We did not come armed for conflict. The Pathfinder carries no weapons systems as your Empire would understand them, but doesn't need them. If threatened, it would simply leave at speeds your dreadnoughts cannot match, using transit methods they cannot track. And then the Empire would have lost an opportunity for a peaceful transition into a larger community of civilizations. The Alliance would be disappointed, but life would continue. We would monitor your development from a distance, and perhaps try again in another century or two. The calm certainty in Chen's voice was more unsettling than any threat could have been. These humans, and the alliance they represented, didn't view the Empire as an adversary to be defeated. They viewed it as a potential partner that wasn't yet ready to join the conversation. Why are you telling me this? Myros asked, echoing his earlier question on the observation deck. Because you're asking questions instead of making demands, Chen replied. Because you've shown curiosity rather than fear. And because every great change needs people who can see beyond the boundaries of their existing paradigms. A soft alert tone sounded from Chen's wrist device. He glanced at it and smiled. It seems our conversation has been productive across the station. The nanobots report over 3,000 individual information requests in the past hour alone. What kind of requests? Myros asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Everything from Alliance art and music to scientific papers, philosophical treatises, and historical accounts of how different civilizations have managed peaceful transitions from authoritarian to cooperative structures. Chen studied Myros thoughtfully. Your people are curious, Admiral. They've simply never been given permission to explore beyond imperial boundaries. Myros felt something shift within him. A perspective that had been slowly changing throughout his career, suddenly crystallizing into clarity. The Empire had survived for 7 millennia by absorbing or destroying all alternatives. But what if there were paths to stability, prosperity, and meaning that didn't require absolute control? The Council will proceed with their plan regardless of my opinion, he said finally. Perhaps, Chen agreed. But ideas, once introduced, have a way of spreading beyond attempts to contain them. Right now, across this station, minds are encountering concepts they've never considered before. Some will reject them, certainly, but others will be changed forever. Dr. Kim smiled gently. We don't bring weapons, Admiral. We bring documentaries, jazz music, and medicine. We bring recipes and poems and scientific theories. We bring the possibility of something new. Hope is contagious, Lieutenant Reyes added quietly. More contagious than fear in the long run. Myros stood in silence for a long moment, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon him. Not just his own history, but the 7,000-year legacy of an empire that had forgotten how to change. The EMP will be deployed in approximately 20 minutes, he said finally. I cannot prevent it. We understand, Chen replied, rising to his feet. We've appreciated your openness, Admiral. Whatever happens next, remember that the Alliance will remain open to peaceful contact when the Empire is ready. As Myros turned to leave, Chen added, Oh, and Admiral, you might want to try the coffee again. The second cup often reveals new flavors that weren't apparent at first taste. The words followed Myros as he left the diplomatic quarters, passing the strangely contemplative guards, and made his way back towards Central Command, where an empire that had ruled for 7 millennia was about to discover that its most powerful weapons were useless against the simple, devastating force of new ideas. We weren't invaded. We were inspired. The Imperial EMP strike failed spectacularly. From the command center, Myros watched as the carefully calculated electromagnetic pulse washed over the Pathfinder without effect. The vessel remained serene, its systems undisturbed, its structure intact. Not even its external lights flickered. Commander Virus stared at the readouts in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. The pulse was calibrated to disable any known technological system. "Clearly," Myros observed dryly, "their systems are not known to us." Halvar paced the chamber like a caged predator. "Launch the boarding shuttles. We'll secure the vessel manually." "Sir," the tactical officer interrupted, "we're detecting unusual activity throughout the station. Communication systems are experiencing anomalies." "What kind of anomalies?" Virus demanded. "Information transfers, sir. Massive ones. Data is flowing through all non-secure channels. Cultural files, scientific documents, historical records, all appearing spontaneously in our general access databases. Restrict access immediately." Halvar ordered. "This is an information attack," but was already too late. Throughout Epsilon 9, personnel were accessing the mysterious new data. Junior officers huddled around displays showing alternative governance structures. Engineers excitedly discussed theoretical papers on technologies the Empire had never conceived. Medical staff reviewed treatment protocols that promised to cure conditions long considered beyond help. The boarding shuttles launched, 12 sleek Imperial vessels converging on the Pathfinder. They reached the human ship without incident, secured themselves to its hull, and then nothing. No reports from the boarding teams. No security breaches detected within the Pathfinder. Simply silence. "Give me visual on the boarding teams," Veers commanded. The display shifted to show helmet camera feeds from the strike force. The images were unexpected. Imperial soldiers sitting peacefully in the Pathfinder's corridors, engaged in conversation with the human crew. Some were examining technical displays with expressions of wonder. Others appeared to be sampling Earth food. "What is the meaning of this?" Halvar exploded. "Those are elite Imperial troops." The communication system activated, and Captain Chen's face appeared on the main display. He looked entirely unperturbed. "Commander Virus, Minister Halvar, Admiral Myros," he greeted them pleasantly. "Your boarding teams have been welcomed aboard the Pathfinder as honored guests. They're currently enjoying some refreshments and cultural exchange. I assure you they're in no danger." "This is an act of war," Halvar declared. "You have subverted Imperial forces and infiltrated our systems." Chen sighed softly. "Minister, we've done neither. Your soldiers were not harmed or coerced. They simply entered an environment where threatening actions were gently neutralized and curiosity was rewarded. As for your systems, we've added information to your public databases. Nothing has been removed or altered. Return our soldiers immediately," Virus demanded. "Of course. They're free to leave whenever they wish. Several have expressed interest in extending their visit, but we respect your authority." Chen nodded to someone off-screen, and within moments, the boarding shuttles detached for the Pathfinder and began returning to Epsilon 9. Myros watched the situation unfolding with a growing sense that they had all fundamentally misunderstood what was happening. This wasn't a confrontation in any traditional sense. It was an introduction. "Your dreadnoughts will arrive in approximately 10 hours, Chun continued calmly. "We'd prefer not to be here when they do, as it would create an unnecessary tension. The Pathfinder will depart shortly, but we want to leave you with something to consider." The screen split, showing a different view, a simple container sitting on what appeared to be a conference table. "Coffee beans," Chen explained. "Enough to last your station several months. A small cultural exchange to remember us by. The brewing instructions are included, as are historical and cultural notes on coffee's role in human diplomatic and intellectual history. Halvar's face contorted with rage. You mock us with trinkets while committing acts of aggression against the Empire. No aggression has occurred. Minister, Chen replied gently. No weapons were fired. No systems damaged. No one harmed. We came in peace, offered friendship, and shared knowledge freely. That your empire interprets this as a threat speaks volumes about its fundamental insecurity. Before Halvar could respond, the communication officer interrupted urgently. Sir, we're receiving a quantum frequency transmission on all channels. It's bypassing all security protocols. The main display shifted automatically, showing a simple text message. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2, share ideas. Sao freedom. What is the meaning of this? Virus demanded of Chun. Simply that our visit has concluded its first purpose, to introduce ourselves and establish that there exist civilizations beyond imperial control. The second phase is already underway. The free exchange of ideas across your station. The rest is up to you. Chin smiled warmly. For what it's worth, Admiral Myros, I believe your people are ready for this conversation. 7,000 years is a long time to hear only one perspective on the universe. The Pathfinder began to move, accelerating smoothly away from Epsilon 9. No weapons were fired. The futility of such an action was apparent to everyone in the command center. You can't simply leave, Halvar protested, his voice now tinged with uncertainty. The Imperial Protocol, has been thoroughly documented and respectfully declined. Chen finished for him. The Freedom Alliance does not recognize the Empire's claimed authority over independent civilizations. However, we remain open to establishing formal diplomatic relations on equal terms when you're ready. The Pathfinder's engines flared with a light that seemed to bend and twist in ways that defied conventional physics. The ship accelerated at an impossible rate, and then it was simply gone, vanished in a way that left no trace on Imperial sensors. Silence fell over the command center. 7,000 years of absolute certainty in Imperial supremacy had been politely but firmly challenged, not by violence or threat, but by the simple fact of an alternative. This changes nothing, Halvar declared finally, but his voice lacked conviction. When the dreadnoughts arrive, we will begin a systematic purge of all contaminated information systems. This incident will be contained. But even as he spoke, reports were flooding in from throughout the station. The returning boarding teams spoke enthusiastically of what they'd seen aboard the Pathfinder. Engineering teams were already attempting to replicate concepts from the Alliance scientific papers. Medical staff reported successful application of new treatment protocols for conditions previously considered untreatable. Most concerning to Imperial authority, ordinary 1,000 years by adapting rather than merely persisting. As the debate continued, Myros noticed a small container that had appeared on the command console before him. A package of the coffee beans Chun had mentioned. A note was attached. For moments of contemplation, the universe is larger than we imagine. Outside the viewport, stars shone in patterns unchanged for millennia. But within Epsilon 9, something new had taken root. Not a revolution of weapons and violence, but a quieter, more profound revolution of perspective. In his quarters later that night, as the station buzzed with conversations that would have been unthinkable days before, Admiral Selim Myros brewed a cup of the strange earth beverage and stood at his viewport, contemplating the stars. The dreadnoughts would arrive soon. Reports would be filed. The official Imperial response would be calculated and implemented. But something had changed, not just in the galaxy at large, but within the Empire itself. A seed had been planted, and Myros suspected it had taken root in more minds than just his own. He sipped the bitter, complex liquid, appreciating how its flavors evolved with each taste. Chen had been right. The second cup did reveal nuances that weren't apparent at first. His communication console signaled an encrypted message, unusual at this hour. When he opened it, he found a simple text. The Alliance welcomes dialogue when the Empire is ready. Freedom takes time to understand after 7,000 years without it. But the conversation has begun. Coordinates for neutral meeting ground enclosed. The coffee will be hot. Captain Chun. Myros found himself smiling. The Empire had not been conquered or defeated. But perhaps, just perhaps, it had been awakened from a very long slumber, not by the bang of weapons, but by the whisper of new ideas. As he considered his response, he realized that the most dangerous weapon the humans had brought wasn't their advanced ship or their mysterious technology. It was hope, the contagious, unstoppable idea that things could be different. Better, more free. No defense system in 7,000 years of imperial development had ever been designed to counter that.